Good morning, guys. So today I just wanted to go over some problems with you on how we can use algebra to solve problems that involve complementary and supplementary angles. Over the last couple of days, we've solved pretty basic problems where if we know angles are complementary and we are given one angle measure, we could subtract that measure to get the measure from 90 to get the measure of the other angle. And if we have supplementary angles and we have one given angle, we know we can subtract that angle measure from 180 to get the measure of the other angle. Those of you who came to Zoom, I had introduced a couple of problems, including algebra, which we're going to work on now. And hopefully these problems will help you to do the problems that you're going to get on quizzes. Okay, so if we take a look at this first example, okay, if you take a look at the steps here on the left-hand side, first thing we want to do is ask ourselves if there is a complementary or a supplementary relationship. So it's kind of easy to tell. If you have a right angle broken into two parts, then you know it's definitely a complementary relationship. If you have a straight angle broken into two parts, then you know it's a supplementary relationship. You need to know that type of relationship in order to complete step number 2. We need to set up an equation and set it equal to either 90 degrees or 180 degrees, depending upon whether they are complementary or supplementary angles. Once we do that, then we can go on to step number 3 and solve the equation. So in this particular problem, we definitely don't have a right angle, okay, but we do have a straight angle that is broken into two pieces. So I definitely know that this is a supplementary relationship, and we know supplementary angles add up to 180 degrees. So my equation is going to look something like this. I'm going to take one of my angles, which is 35 degrees. I'm going to add it to the angle that's labeled 5x, and I'm going to set it equal to 180 since I know these are supplementary angles. Throughout the calculations, you can leave out the degree symbols. You don't want to confuse that with a 0 or a decimal point or anything, so you can just leave those out. So once we solve our equation, set up our equation, we now want to solve. So my first step to solve a two-step equation would be to eliminate the 35. So I would have to use my inverse operations and subtract 35 on both sides. I will be left with 5x on the left-hand side and 145 on the right-hand side. We know the inverse of multiplying by 5 on the left is to divide by 5. So I want to divide 145 by 5, and we are going to wind up getting an answer of 29 degrees. Okay, sometimes the directions will say to solve for x. Other times it might say to find the measure of the missing angle. So if we take a look at the measure of the missing angle, it's labeled as 5x. If I substitute in 29 degrees for x and I multiply that by 5, I'm going to wind up getting 145 degrees. Okay, and I know that my angle measure is correct because a 35 degree angle plus a 145 degree angle is going to give us 180 degrees altogether, which is what I need. Okay, let's take a look at another problem. So here we want to decide if we have a complementary or supplementary relationship. So again, I definitely don't have one right angle here, but I definitely have one full straight angle that is broken into two pieces. So I know it is a supplementary relationship. The sum of the two angles is 180 degrees. So I want to take one of the angle measures, 110, add the other, 7x, set it equal to 180, and solve. So I want to isolate the x term by getting rid of the 110. So we want to subtract 110 on both sides. We're left with 7x on the left and 70 on the right. We're going to divide both sides by 7, and we're going to get x is equal to 10. So if you were asked to find the measure of the missing angle, we would have 7 times 10 or 70 degrees, which makes sense because the two angles would then add up to 180 degrees. Okay, let's take a look at our third problem. Okay, so here we certainly do have a right angle broken into two pieces. So we are dealing with complementary angles, and we know they have a sum of 90 degrees. So my equation would say that 22, the measure of one angle, plus the 2x, the measure of the other angle, is equal to 90. We would want to subtract 22 on both sides to isolate the x term. So we have 2x is equal to 60 degrees. We want to divide both sides by 2, and we get x is equal to 34. So if you were asked to find the measure of the missing angle, we would have 2 times 34, or 60 degrees. And if I added that to 22, I would get the 90 degrees that I would need for these to be complementary. Okay, a little bit of a different type of problem is this last problem that I'm going to go over, where there's no diagram, but you're given enough information to set up an equation. So it says if x and y are complementary and the measure of angle x is 37 degrees, what is the measure of angle y? Okay, so this first part of the first sentence, well, the only sentence, is really the key to setting up this problem. As soon as you know that they are complementary angles, you know they have a sum of 90 degrees. And it's telling us that angle x and angle y are complementary, so their sum would have to be 90 degrees. You're also told that x is equal to 37 degrees. So if I substitute that in, and I can get rid of the angle symbol within the calculation, 37 plus y is equal to 90. To isolate the y, I would have to subtract 37 on both sides, and I would get y is equal to 53 degrees. All right, so that problem is worded a little bit differently. There's no diagram, but you have enough information within the problem to set up an equation and solve. Okay, so I'm hoping that these will help you with the quizzes problems. If you have any questions along the way, please let me know. Okay, otherwise have a great day.